Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on Dimensions in Dynamics 365 Business Central. My name is Katie, and I'm the facilitator today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer questions at the end. This session will be recorded and posted on our blog, as well as shared with you early next week. Now, I would like to introduce our presenter today, Lindsay Fell, who is a Business Central Solutions Specialist at Encore. Lindsay, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks everyone for being here. So as mentioned, we'll be going over dimensions in Dynamics 365 Business Central. Dimensions have always been a large part of Business Central. Over the years, Microsoft has continued to provide new ways to inquire against your dimensional data. So in this webinar, we'll be covering a very high-level demo of how dimensions work in BC. So to start off with the agenda, I'll be going to briefly discuss what dimensions are and the different types you should be familiar with. Next, I'll be showing you a demo in Business Central on how to create dimensions and dimension values, along with assigning the global dimensions within the general ledger setup. Lastly, within the setup portion for this demo, I'll go through the process of adding dimensions within a customer card. But keep in mind that dimensions can be set up within any master record, such as item card, vendor card, chart of accounts, by using the same process I'll be going over. I'll also take a few minutes to show you how the dimensions are reflected in a sales invoice so you can see different scenarios while posting. And then after the setup and entering a sales invoice, there comes the reporting aspect of dimensions. So at this time, I'll go over how you can quickly view transactions based off of your global dimensions within the chart of accounts, and also show you how to view, do the analysis views. Those can be helpful to see different data. So really quickly, just the basic overview, what are dimensions? Basically, they're used to group different or categorize your data just for analysis purposes. Along with dimensions, there are dimension values, which are also considered as subcategories or the tags that are attached to your data. So over to the left here, you can see that the structure of dimensions versus the dimension values. And you can have as many dimension values as you want, but for the main dimensions, we do suggest having up to 8 within the system. However, you can have more. It just gets a little bit more confusing and involved when you're doing reporting. So the two different types of dimensions we have are global dimensions and shortcut dimensions. The global dimensions are going to be the two main categories that you're going to want to view and analyze the most within your company. For the shortcut dimensions are going to be your additional categories that you may want to analyze and report on, but they aren't as important within your company. So to move on to the demo part, we're going to go ahead and create your dimensions. So I'll switch dimension. So in my test environment, we already have a few dimensions set up. However, I will go ahead and create a new one so you can see that process. And for this demo, I'll just select project. So creating your dimension there, in order to create your dimension value, we're going to go up into your ribbon, click dimensions, dimension values. In here, I'll just do projects for Alpha, 11, Charlie as an example. And here you can do the full name description as well. So now you have your dimension values. If for any reason you can go ahead and block the dimensions if you needed, or the dimension values if you needed to. However, you can't delete them if they are already posted on a transaction. A couple of things I do want to go over while we're looking at the other dimensions, which you have an option for. So if we're looking at dimension values in your department, notice how a couple of them are abbreviated, and then you have the name description here, the full name. So that is an option to use as a code as well. And another option you have is you can do numbered codes instead of abbreviations or the full word. So when you're doing that, I do want to stress to be careful with this, because in most cases, the actual name description will not populate. It'll just be the code. So your team would have to already know ahead of time or be aware of what those number codes reflect. So sometimes it's best just to use the word description or an abbreviation, but number codes are an option if that's how you would like to proceed. Also, we do have different options for value type. So I'm not sure if you're already familiar with the chart of accounts totaling view, but you can do the same thing here in dimensions with starting with the begin total, and then your standard dimension values would be the posting dimension values you would select, and then you have your end total. Along with that, you would have to select the standard or the posting dimension values within your end total, so it knows which dimension values to include within that total itself. This is going to be more of a higher level of reporting, and it isn't always necessary, but again, it's just an extra availability option for you when you are reporting. For the most part, though, you're going to see that your dimension values are just standard. Okay, now that we have set up our dimensions, we're going to go ahead and view the general ledger setup so we can assign our global dimensions. So there's this fact box here under the general tab for your dimensions specifically. It looks like we already have our global dimensions set up under my test environment. However, if you're starting from scratch, you can always just go home and then change global dimensions. And then here we can select our two global dimensions, which are going to be the main dimensions that we want to view or report on. So you can choose from the list here. And once you have your global dimensions set into your system, we don't really recommend that you change them moving forward, but it is something that you are able to do if you need to, if for some reason the dimension becomes obsolete for some reason. Also, with setting up your global dimensions here, you're going to want to select your shortcut dimensions as well. So again, we have up to 8 options here, but you are able to do more than 8. But again, it just gets a little bit to be a little bit too much when reporting. So I'm just going to go ahead and select a couple of shortcuts just so we can have some more demonstration. We'll do project. All right, so now that we have all of that set up in our general ledger setup, we're going to go ahead and add these dimensions to the customer card. Oh, after the system updates itself. Okay, so again, you can set these dimensions up in anything with including your master data, so your customers, vendors, items, chart of accounts. So here I'll just click on this first customer. Then you'll go up to customer dimensions. So again, it looks like we have some dimensions set up already. Just to kind of go over the value posting. So this one is code mandatory, which requires a value, but if you leave your dimension value code blank, this allows the user to input whatever value that they want to enter at that time. So it just means that you need to have a value, however, the user can select anything they want. Now you could have a subset under allowed values filter that provides the value codes that are allowed. So for instance, with our area code, we do have a lot of options here. However, we're only saying that the area 20, 30, and 40 are going to be allowed to be entered for this customer. For the same code, that means a value is entered in the dimension value column that has to be the same as the value. So they can't change, the user cannot change this value code on any entry. And then if it's blank, this indicates that there are no restrictions and the user can either remove this or change the dimension value accordingly. So let's go ahead and add project. And I think I'm going to do code mandatory, but leave the dimension value code blank. And then I'm not going to use any allowed value filters, which means that the user can select any of the value codes. Okay, so now that we have our customer dimensions set up, we're going to go ahead and create a sales invoice. So I'm just going to do that straight from the customer card under new document, sales invoice. Okay, just going to go ahead and enter an item here. So a couple of things, if you scroll all the way over to the right, you can then now see the different dimensions that you have. We have our two global dimensions, and then we have our two shortcut dimensions. So if you utilized all 8 of the shortcut dimensions, all of those dimensions would be viewable here. And notice that the department and the customer group already auto-populated based off of the dimensions associated with this customer and if there was anything associated with the item as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do a preview posting here. And notice that there are a couple of error messages that come up. It says select a dimension value code for area, and then select a dimension value code for project. That's because when we were setting up the customer card, I don't know if you remember, but we did leave those value fields blank. So it's telling us that we need to go in and add those before posting. So I'm going to go into my header part under invoice and dimensions to add those dimensions to the order. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and do a different area code just to show you what that would look like. Because if you remember when setting up or looking at the customer card dimensions, only 20, 30, and 40, I believe, were the area codes that were allowed. So if I select 70, let's go ahead and see what that would look like. And then, yep, I'm going to go ahead and update my lines to match my header. So it says the area 70 is not allowed. So that is a good error message for you. So the user knows that they have certain area codes that they need to select from. And again, if you ever needed to view that, you can just open up your fact box, go to your customer number. Maybe if you don't remember what the dimension codes are allowed, you can come back in here and view that if needed. Okay, so I go ahead and correct that accordingly. Preview my posting. And it looks like I'm good to go. If you click on the GL entry, you can see the dimensions and the different accounts that it's associated with as well. All right, so those are a few different scenarios that you'll come across with your sales invoice. Next is going to be the reporting process. So heading over to the chart of accounts, you can go ahead and create your filter based off of the global dimensions only within here. So off over to the right, I'll click my filter icon. And you're going to want to do filter totals by. And here we have our two global dimensions that I have selected prior. So customer group filter or the department filter. So I'm going to just go ahead and do department filter. And then the drop down will provide the different options. So I don't know if you noticed, but there were some amounts, some net changes that changed based off of that sales department filter. If you wanted to, of course, you could go ahead and click on those links and dig into it a little bit more. You can also see that the different customer group codes are referenced here as well. If you wanted to go further into your filter, you could even filter off of a different customer group. If you wanted to do that. All right. So that's based off of the whole chart of accounts. You could also click into a specific, a specific account as well, and you can go ahead and filter in here that way. Oh, I don't have anything associated with prod. Okay, so those are some quick ways to filter off of your global dimensions. And now if we take a look at the analysis views, this will allow you to search multiple dimensions and not just your global. So we have a couple views already set up. My general ledger is not fully set up yet, so I'm going to go ahead and click in there and just walk you through how to set up an analysis view card. So you can choose GL accounts, your cash flow accounts, or statistical accounts. But for this purpose, we'll do GL accounts. You could include an account filter if you would like. Otherwise, you can just leave that blank and it'll just take everything from your general ledger. Here we have the option to do an analysis view based off of 4 dimensions. So again, you don't have to use your global dimensions if you wanted to use one of your other shortcuts. So for instance, I'll just select area and maybe the project. Also up here, you do have the option to have your analysis views automatically update based off of every general ledger post that you do or not. So up here in the ribbon, you have enable update on posting. Otherwise, if you didn't want to do that, if you didn't like that feature, you can go ahead and disable it as well. If you do enable update on posting, that is going to probably be the best, just so it auto updates. So every time you come in here into this view, everything will be accurate and up to date. However, it does take a little bit more time when you're posting. So it depends how often and how much you're posting. You might feel a little lag in the system. So if that's something that you don't like, you could set up a date compression, which means how often is your analysis view going to auto update. So it just kind of depends on how many or how often you want to look at this view. Is it going to be daily, weekly, monthly, and whatnot? If you don't want to have it auto update, you can manually update it here. Just make sure that you go into this analysis view card and update that before viewing that the view. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do analysis by dimension. There's going to be a couple of options here. You can do the show as columns as period, or also by the dimensions that you have chosen or your GL account. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and do the period just to show you how that looks. Again, we have our account filters. So this is pulling in from the general ledger card that we set up. But again, if you didn't want to have account filters, you can go ahead and remove that. And here are the two dimensions that we have selected. So if you wanted to, just leave that blank. It'll pull in all of the different area codes within your view. And same thing with your project filter. However, if you wanted to hone in on any of them, you can go ahead and select that. If you wanted to do multiple dimension values, you can go ahead and do that line in between, and then you can add additional value codes there. If you scroll down, this is the view by option. So we can do it view by day, week, month, quarter, accounting period, and so on. So maybe I'll just do quarter for now. And then up in your ribbon, you can do show matrix. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of data in this test company right now, so I do apologize for that, but you can kind of get the idea of how that would look like just based off of the criteria that I have entered. So you have your different accounts that we have selected that we wanted to view, and then your total amount based off of the different periods that you have selected. So a view that I like to see is if you show as columns and you change that, you can change it based off of our dimensions. And you can do show matrix that way. And here are the dimension values that we selected, 30 and 40. So again, I apologize that I don't have any transactions here that are pulling up, but that's another way that you can view this analysis by dimensions matrix. Okay. Oh, here, also, I forgot to mention, there is a show column name toggle that you can turn on. So remember how I said if you have to be careful when using your dimension value as number codes. Not everybody's going to know what those number codes mean, but if you do show column name, that should pull in, yep, there you go, the different names rather than the code value. Okay, so that is the end of the demo. Katie, do I have any questions?
I don't see any coming in right now, but if anybody does have any questions, feel free to please enter them into the question area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I will share the link to our events page in the chat if you'd like to register for our upcoming webinar sessions. I will also be putting the link where you can set your email preferences and opt into our monthly and quarterly emails so that you can stay in the know about upcoming events and see our latest blog articles. So I'll add that into the chat right now as well. So I don't see any questions that have come in, Lindsay.
Okay.
Thank you for all the information today, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yes, you too. Thanks, everyone.